This is We Bleed Orange and Black, the podcast for Halloween and horror lovers. I'm Jeff, and I'm repping the 80s.
I'm Ryan, and I'm repping the 90s.
This week, we're bringing you to San Diego Comic-Con 2024.
Biff, pow, it's a rock'em sock'em rumble in true comic fashion. In this corner, spooking and kooking, greatest American hero. And the challenger, goofing and oofing, Big Bad Beetleborgs. Who is more worthy of our comic conversation? Find out in this uncanny episode of Put Up Your Spooks.
My episode is The Greatest American Hero, Season 2, Episode 6, The Beast in the Black. For those who've never seen it, The Greatest American Hero is about Ralph Hinckley Jr., a humble high school teacher who receives a supersuit from aliens that gives him incredible powers. Unfortunately, he loses the instruction manual. His partner is Bill Maxwell, a sardonic FBI agent. Together, they get into adventures and solve crimes. Ryan, give us a taste of that sweet, sweet theme song.
Flying away on a wing and a prayer. Who could it be? Believe it or not, it's just me.
The story begins with a sad, strange premise. Ralph has talked his way into an old, condemned house so he can strip copper from the walls to get his underfunded school some much-needed cash.
Well, what do you think?
I think it's extraordinary.
For a Halloween party, maybe.
I have to call out Ralph's Elliot McMillan-level lack of imagination here, because his powers include flight, super strength, bulletproof skin, invisibility, precognition, telekinesis, x-ray vision, super speed, pyrokinesis, holographic vision, shrinking, and psychometry, among others. And the only way he can think to make money is to raid an old house. So on this tour of the house, he quickly establishes that 1. The previous owner was a nutbag. 2. The realtor got electrocuted. 3. There's a heavy chandelier. And 4. There's a hidden brick wall. A wheelchair comes to life and barrels down the stairs towards them, but Ralph pushes the other realtor lady out of the way.
I was relieved because they may have been slightly bruised by that wheelchair.
I thought it was kind of funny that he would tackle a woman to the ground to avoid a wheelchair, because it probably did more damage jumping on her and slamming her to the ground. Except this is like an old 80s wheelchair.
Yeah, right.
And it
Made
probably weighed
of
as much
iron.
as a Buick. Yeah, exactly. The next day, Ralph goes to school and browbeats his students into helping him strip the house. Most of them, including a young Michael Pare, speak with thick New York accents, despite the fact they live in Los Angeles. Because in the 80s, all school kids,
Yeah.
all tough kids spoke with New York accents.
Yeah, they were clearly like the tough kid outcast kids because
Yeah.
they were like, "What? We ain't got no class present. What?
Hey, yo,
What do you want us
Mr.
to
H."
buy our acceptance? Those kids will never accept us on the rich side of the school."
Before the kids arrive, Ralph and Maxwell scope out the house. Ralph is in his supersuit, which he can wear under his clothes, yet for some reason never does.
You have to know that he's got it so that the danger levels decrease.
But also I think canonically the suit is very unpredictable because he doesn't know how to use the powers.
Right.
And so weird wacky stuff is always happening. And so when Ralph looks at that weird brick wall, he can perceive a ghostly room. Inside, there's a woman with icy blue eyes. He phases through the wall, plunging into a chaotic negative zone where he meets the titular Beast in the Black. A demonic storm of flashing eyes and snarling, slavering jaws mauls him and spits him back out through the wall. Despite his supersuit, he's all jacked up. Maxwell rushes him to the hospital where they discover that Ralph's body is covered in scars. He theorizes that somehow he had entered the 4th dimension.
You don't want to do that.
Then he remembers, oh no, the kids are at the house. Ralph and Max hurry back just in time for Chekhov's chandelier to drop. Blam! It falls on Maxwell's head. I chuckled as I watched it, and I blurted, dead.
Yeah.
But Maxwell is dead. Body count 1. Ralph tries to revive him, but it's no use. Until a bolt of ghostly energy enters Maxwell's corpse. His eyes pop open, and they are icy blue.
And his crushed skull is repaired.
Back at the hospital, Maxwell gets possessed by the ghost lady and pulls a gun on Ralph, who really needs to keep that suit on.
Yeah.
She escapes. Naturally, Ralph consults a psychic who confirms his theory about the fourth dimension. The beast in the black prevents anything from piercing the veil between the living and the dead. So he should have waited until Halloween, or at least a full moon on a leap year. To save Maxwell, he will have to capture him, drag him through the fourth dimension, get past the beast in the black, expel the ghost lady, and then haul Maxwell back past the beast and into our world.
You should have let me go. I begged you. And I've never begged for anything in my life.
You have no life, Sheila. You're dead. And you're going to stay that way. Bill was your last chance. And when this house goes, you go with it.
Then you will too.
Ghost Lady isn't having it, and while Ralph's supersuit may be powerless in the fourth dimension, she can hurl small objects with her mind, or, hands, if she felt like it. There's like 3-pound objects, and she's using her ghost powers of the fourth dimension. Ralph manages to escape just in time for the wrecking crew to demolish the place. The end.
Hey, what's going on here?
Costume party. Afraid we lost track of time.
You would have lost more than that if you'd have hung around here a little longer. We're supposed to level that dump.
Well, don't let us hold you up.
One thing I did want to note was the penthouse that the possessed lady flees to is in the Trianon apartment building in Los Angeles. It's this famous old architectural building from the late 1700s. And not only was there an episode of True Blood shot there, and it was used in Fright Night Part 2. It is also where our friend Matthew Jones lives.
Oh, whoa, cool.
Chickadee, mommy, give me something good to eat.
How about this for a treat? It's the Fox Kids Beetleborgs Halloween Bash Sweepstakes. You can win the biggest, baddest Halloween party ever with yours truly and the Beetleborgs. We'll bring plenty of munchies, cool music, spooky Halloween costumes, and loads of labyrinthic Beetleborgs prizes. You're also going trick-or-treating with me and the Big Bad Beetleborgs. 500 other kids will win Beetleborgs action figures. Stand or get a postcard with your name and address by October 16th, too. Fox Kids Beetleborgs Halloween Bash, P.O. Box 1129, Los Angeles, 90078.
I can't remember it, but I definitely entered that sweepstakes because I entered every Fox Kids sweepstakes, as previously mentioned on the 16 Man Bag podcast, and I'm sure I sent 50 postcards and heard nary a peep.
So, Ryan, I don't know how much table setting you have prepared for Big Bad Beetleborgs.
So much table setting.
Please explain the premise of the show to me.
I was worried because I was like, he's not going to understand anything that's happening. But luckily and helpfully, they explain everything that is going on throughout the entire episode. They're like, if we can't have our Beetle Bonders, we won't be able to transform into Beetleborgs, which anyone who was a fan of the show would certainly know. But it's like, as you know, it's like a character explaining to a character that already knows for the benefit of the audience. But anyway, 3 typical average kids.
Inside a haunted mansion, just by chance, free to ghost to make them Beetleborgs. Big Bad Beetleborgs. Big Bad Beetleborgs.
They free this ghost who grants them one wish. He's been trapped in an organ. He's like an Elvis ghost. He's not Elvis. And he's not a ghost. He's a phasm from another dimension. Like, he's not a dead person. And so he's got lots of interesting and strange powers.
Are the monsters that live in the house part of the wish?
They are not. The house is like a haunted house that all the kids are afraid of. And I forget how they get up in there. I'm sure the bullies like dare them to go in there or something. I can't remember. I haven't watched the first episode in many a year. But the 3 main kids go into the house and they start getting chased by a Dracula and a mummy and a Frankenstein. So they end up like running through all these secret passages and stuff, and they end up in the organ room. They knock into this pipe organ and they free Flabber the Phasm. As a reward for freeing him, he grants them one wish, and so they wish that they could be their favorite comic book heroes, the Beetleborgs. But Flabber is kind of a, I wouldn't say screw up, but his magic is pretty wild. And so in releasing the super suits from the comic, he also releases the villains from the comic. And then they terrorize the small town of Charterville, and the Beetleborgs have to fight them every week.
That all makes sense. The fact that there's a haunted house that is populated by the classic monsters who are not ghosts and who are not interdimensional phasms.
No.
That's the part that trips me up.
I mean, if you were a classic Universal monster, you'd seek out other classic Universal monsters to be roommates with, probably by process of elimination. Like, nobody else is going to want to rent you a room.
Sure, but if you were establishing vampires, werewolves, mummies, and Frankensteins, why do you say the existence of a ghost depends on this extra-dimensional entity called a phasm?
I'm sure that there are actual ghosts in the series too, like here and there, although I don't remember at this point. It just so happens that he is not a dead human ghost. He's just a phasm. A completely original creation.
Seems like a hat on a hat.
Well, I think because he needed to be like a wish granter and have like goofy powers to make kids laugh. Because he's always transforming into like weird shit and stuff. Maybe a ghost.
I mean, a ghost. Just say that a ghost could do that, I guess.
Yeah, but like historically, they don't really.
Or make him a genie.
Unless it's a Ghostbusters ghost. Yeah,
Right.
Make him a genie because like he's even trapped inside a pipe. I mean, he's essentially a genie.
Yeah.
I don't think they ever even call him a ghost in the series. I could be wrong though.
Just by chance, free to ghost.
As you may have guessed, dear listeners, we are talking about Big Bad Beetleborgs, which began airing in the United States in September 1996. So I was 14 years old and way too old to be watching the Big Bad Beetleborgs.
This is not like for a Power Rangers audience. This is for like a kindergarten audience.
It's for a very little kid audience. However, it pushed all my buttons because it was a haunted house with monsters. It was like very Halloween centric. It had wish granting, which I was still very much a believer in. Wishing on all those stars.
And Fox Kids sweepstakes.
Yeah, and sweepstakes galore. It had excellent Sentai heroes in incredible suits. You may not be surprised to learn that I want to make that blue suit so bad, but I think having spent 10 years on my Green Ranger suit, it's probably a little beyond me. But they are gorgeous, and like I really think the Japanese artisans who made those suits are like just tip top. I mean, the designs are cool, the craftsmanship is cool. Also, what turned me on so much about the Beetleborgs is that I was determined to be a part of it. I was really obsessed with becoming an actor at that point. So I wrote a letter to the production of Beetleborgs. I was like, I could be the fourth Beetleborg. It's the orange Dragonborg. And I sent my designs. The helmets in the show have like eyes. Mine just had a visor that goes across, kind of like a Power Ranger, but it also had a visor piece going down the chin in like a T shape. And later on, they introduced some new suits that had the visor going across and down in the T shape. And I was like, how dare they steal my idea? But I didn't realize that those suits all came from Japan. And then later, they also introduced a Dragonborg. So I was like, fuck, they stole it. I can't believe it. But I got a letter back from the producer, and he was like, you know, I think that we're just not really casting right now, so I'm really sorry. And sent me an autographed photo, a black and white, of all three Beetleborgs signed by all the kids.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Which I hung on my wall for many years. I think I sent another letter, and then he wrote back again and was like...
He was like, please stop harassing us.
He was being very sweet. He was like, I think our stages are just too far apart, because I was in the East Coast and they were in Los Angeles. And, you know, just being very kind instead of saying, just fuck off and please stop writing to us. Unlike Cartoon Network, when I pitched my last cartoon idea, where the guy got on the phone with me and literally said, we're never buying your idea, so stop. So that was a bit discouraging, but then they did cast a fourth Beetleborg, and I was like, God damn it! But it was like a short mini run, and he eventually lost his powers at the end of season 1 and was never on the show again, but still, I was quite jealous. So, yeah, my ties with this show run deep. And the funny thing is, when I finally met you, like 10 years later, you told me your wife almost worked on Beetleborgs. But it was a non-union show, and it was like out in the orange orchards of like God knows where in Los Angeles. I'm sure it was like a really low payday, so she turned them down.
So I know that Power Rangers is like a thin veneer around an original Japanese production. Was the Beetleborgs stuff also all shot in Japan?
It was. It was called Juko Bee Fighter.
Bee fighters.
Yeah, they were beetles.
Okay.
So anyways, let's get into the episode.
Let's get into it.
It's Halloween night, and some trick-or-treaters go into the graveyard where the villains that were released from the comics live, in a crypt. They get scared by the villains, aka the Magnivores, and these silly monsters who are also miracles of foam fabrication. I defy you to make as cool monster suits out of upholstery foam. They realize that Halloween is a thing. That's about it. They go back down into their crypt. They are playing with a pumpkin. The main villain, Vexor, comes out and makes a plan to kidnap one of the Hillhurst monsters, which are the creatures from the haunted house, and ransom them for a beetle bonder.
Without those, we can't transform into Beetleborgs.
The Hillhurst monsters are working out and giving Frankenstein a ton of shit for being just like a clumsy asshole. The Beetleborgs come to trick-or-treat. They're dressed as the Hillhurst monsters. They explain Halloween, and Frank is like enamored. He goes out to get some free candy.
Trick-treat.
Aren't you a little big for this, Sonny?
Trick-treat.
Out in the town, the Magnivore monsters almost capture Frank, but Trip and Van, who are the show bullies, even though they're two total twerps, show up as Richard Nixon and scare the Magnivores away.
Two kids in a trench coat and
On
a
each other's
Nixon
shoulders.
mask, which I thought was the one inspired touch in the whole episode. But also, always gotta give props to the kids' TV street decor and Halloween vibes.
They go to Zoom Comics, which is owned by the Green Beetleborgs' father, which is another aspect of the show that I found compelling. Imagine owning a comic book store. And I was super into comics at this point in my life. Frank goes to the comic shop also, and is greeted by Nano, who is the 90s rockin' granny of the show.
Major costume.
Trick-treat.
But join the party and save the last dance for me, Sparky.
Okay.
The Magnivores and the Beetleborgs arrive at Zoom Comics, and the Magnivores summon Grenade Guy from the comic to help them kidnap Frankenstein. He crashes the party. The Beetleborgs Beetle Blast. Cut to a silly little joke at the haunted house where Flabber, the Phasm from the fourth dimension, possibly in cahoots with the Beast in Black, steals some trick-or-treaters' candy, like a dick. Cut back to the comic book store, which is not very big, but the Beetleborgs cannot find Grenade Guy until he's outed by a little kid who spots his image on the cover of the comic book. Van and Trip, the rich bullies, bug Joe, the red Beetleborg, so she dunks them in the apple bobber and dumps them into a cake face first. And if I recall correctly, these two kids are constantly getting covered in food goo. Grenade Guy and Frank leave the party. The kids go to Hillhurst because they can't find anyone. They de-Beetle Blast. They find a ransom note explaining the situation. They transform into Beetleborgs again. 2 transformation sequences in one episode. They summon their Beetle vehicles because you got to sell those toys. They locate Frank. They fight Grenade Guy and kill him and send him back to the comic books. And then the Hillhurst ghosts go back to giving Frank no end of shit for being slow. The end.
Looks like everything's back to normal.
If you can call this normal.
Perhaps you were too harsh to Bone Chillers.
Bone Chillers didn't have no superheroes. Maybe it did. I don't know.
Sorry, Frankenmeans. Halloween's over.
Right about now is when we would get down to ratings and have our dust up. But because this is our Comic-Con spectacular, let's talk about Comic-Con.
Let's get the other guys in here.
So this was my first con living outside of Los Angeles, so I had to fly in, and Ryan and Drew were there to pick me up at the San Diego airport.
Yeah, we weren't planning on that, but boy, I got a late start.
The first thing we did was something that we thought we were not going to get into, was the Shaun of the Dead 20th anniversary Winchester Pub immersive experience.
Oh man, as we were walking through the door, I said, "It's happening."
We walked up to the sidewalk in the Gaslamp District. We saw the Winchester Pub, and we're like, oh man, there's no way we're getting in. I talked to the people working the door. They'd already sort of capped the line, but they're like, yeah, we'll put you on the list. We're like, oh, score. The one thing I wanted to make sure we did, because I was thinking of the Dungeons & Dragons tavern experience, which was truly epic.
Yep.
And we went inside this small bar. We each received a sealed can of Shaun of the Dead beer. And they're like, you can't drink that in here. You have to drink it outside where it is also illegal to drink it. And we're like, what are we supposed to do with these beers? It's like 3 o'clock on a Thursday. We hung out for a couple minutes, took 1 or 2 photos.
I asked one of the volunteers, is this it? Is anything going to happen? And the volunteer said, no, this is it. If you were into swag, it would have been great.
We found a restaurant where we could sit down and crack them open, and then cheers. We were on our way to enjoying a very boozy Comic-Con.
Oh, yeah.
So we just ambled up to the seaside village to our favorite taco spot. After that, we hit the merry-go-round. Oh, yeah.
It was a highlight, frankly.
It really was. Ryan and I are huge merry-go-round fans. People might remember from our interview with Chelsea Sutton when we went to the merry-go-round on the Santa Monica Pier, and it turned out that the same person built that merry-go-round in San Diego. So we took a spin. It was the last ride of the night, and then we headed over to the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund's party for the relaunch of EC Comics. I didn't have my badge on. I wasn't wearing like a superhero shirt or anything nerdy like that. But when we walked into the lobby, the woman behind the counter was like, 3rd floor. I was like, I could be checking in. I could be asking for directions. She's like, 3rd floor.
Nerd floor, more like.
Oh, busted. I'm a nerd. All right, you got me. But actually, the party was up on the roof, which was amazing because little did we know that there was going to be a fireworks show along with a drone show that we had an amazing view of from the rooftop. Ryan, what did you think of your first drone show?
It was awesome. The drones even spewed smoke. I don't know how they did that, but they did all kinds of wonderful drone-y representations of Deadpool and Wolverine. It was frankly better than the movie.
So yeah, there were these titanic animations flashing across the sky of Deadpool and Wolverine and facing off and big X's and Wolverine claws and things like that. And it was kind of mind-blowing. And then it ended, and we're like, all right, man, that was cool. I'm glad we just happened to look over and see that. And then the next drone show started, and this giant flaming symbol arced around the sky into a giant Fantastic Four, like Johnny Storm. You know, if I'm being honest, I'm pretty jaded at this point. Like, I'm kind of over a lot of these franchises and various IPs, but seeing like Johnny Storm do a giant flaming four in the sky, I was like, oh, like my heart went pitter patter, my little nerd heart.
Again, yeah, I mean, it's going to be way cooler than the movie, but at least they're going to have human form Galactus, which I'm a fan of. Yeah, a big Galactus did rise over us at one point, and I texted my cousin who was in Maine at the time, and I was like, man, they did this crazy drone show. And he was like, I think I saw that. Did Galactus rise up at one point? And I was like, damn, that was a big Galactus.
Life size.
Yeah.
But we were there for the party. I met some really cool people, including the fine folks at Critical Entertainment.
And I fell asleep right in front of the DJ booth until a random nerd shook me awake thinking I was dead.
It was a long night, and then we capped it off, as usual, at a horrible, filthy roach motel that I rented like a year ago.
Yep.
When you rent a room online, they show you the room. They don't show you the parking lot. And I feel like that is a service they need to provide.
And they don't show you the photos of dead flies and roaches on the floors.
I mean, why would they?
Completely dishonest. 1 star.
Yeah. We've stayed in some bad rooms for Comic-Con, and this was not the worst.
I still feel itchy.
But, yeah, it was less than ideal. And they also shortchanged us and put us in a 1-bed room instead of a 2-bed. But enough of that. Friday, we met up with our friends Ed and Elliot, and we're like, all right, first thing we want to do is jump into line for FX bright and early. Let's get a start on this. This is probably our only chance we're going to be able to get into the FX activations. The line was already wrapped around the park and like trailing over to the convention center. So we're like, Voodoo Ranger pirate ship?
Mm-hmm.
So the line was a little better for the pirate ship. They had a little more shade.
We got in a lot faster than last year.
No monkey this year, which was good because the DJ volume was at 5 trillion%. But we didn't stay on the pirate ship for too long before we headed back to the seaside village for tacos at our favorite taco joint.
And then we went to the Hilton, to the windy balcony where we always convene.
There's a hotel that overlooks the San Diego Bay. It is windswept, dramatic, has lots of seating, very lovely. Just a nice place to kind of crash out for a while.
We were joined by our good pal Tom Kenny, who later that night invited us to the SpongeBob 25th anniversary Den of Geek party. We were going to go back to the car and get real clothes on, which was my plan since last year, but then we were like, forget it. So had to go to this fancy party in shorts and t-shirts, covered in sunblock and greasy like always. But we got in for free, and it was open bar, dude.
It was a very nice party. I got to meet Squidward. I got a hug from DJ Lance from Yo Gabba Gabba. That was incredibly nice. Been a lot of really nice people.
They decorated it up nice.
It was very cool. There was a bunch of older people like us who were like, Yo Gabba Gabba, never heard of it. Anyway, open bar.
Yeah.
And then all of the waiters and waitresses and bartenders were like in tears. They're like, it's DJ Lance, it's Squidward.
Literally. Yeah, I did think it was funny as I observed that there was like an adults-only open bar party for a children's cartoon show that none of the attendees would have been young enough to actually watch.
So after the Nickelodeon party, we hustled on over to a bar or a club.
It was a bar. It was a shit-kicker bar, but it was huge and massive. A live band was playing country western music.
It was hopping.
I had stopped drinking by that point, but Jeff kept shoving more IPAs into my hands.
IPAs, did I?
Yes.
But you hate IPAs.
At the open bar party, you kept shoving IPAs into my hands, and I was just trying to drink some water. I would take like 3 sips and then throw it away, and then there would be another one.
Serves you right.
But yeah, I did fall asleep on my feet at the shit kicker bar.
Jesus. Why don't we set up why you were so exhausted for all of Comic-Con?
Well, for the last several months, I mean, I'm always exhausted at Comic-Con. I don't know what my deal is, although I don't sleep very well when we're down there. But in 2014, I took a solid year to build a Green Ranger helmet, which we have discussed. Ryan even asked me, like, when's Green Ranger coming out on one of our final in-person 16 in Bag podcasts? And intermittently over the years, I kind of gone back to it, because I decided once I had the helmet, I might as well build the rest of the suit.
How many years would you say you just worked on the helmet?
It was like a solid year. It took me a couple of months just to build up the head shape into like a perfectly round, symmetrical shape, and then forget about putting the details in. And then casting it, molding it, redoing the details that weren't quite right on a hard surface, and then painting it, which I fucked up like 7 times.
So that should paint a picture of Ryan's perfectionist streak before he started on this journey of creating the rest of the Green Ranger suit.
For the last few years, right before Comic-Con, like 2 weeks, I go, oh shit, Comic-Con's coming up. I better finish this suit 2 weeks before Comic-Con. So 2 years ago, I got nothing. Last year, 2 weeks before Comic-Con, I managed to like get a good start on the bodysuit, but I don't think I finished it. But that took me 2 weeks. And then right after Comic-Con last year, I started up again because I was like, I'm not going to procrastinate this time. I'm not going to wait until 2 weeks before Comic-Con this time. So I worked on it for like a couple months, and I was painting the cuffs around the arms and ankles, and I was trying to screen print them, and it wasn't quite working to my satisfaction. Then I was airbrushing, and my airbrush hose got a hole in it halfway through painting, and so finally I got a good paint job, but it's still kind of splotchy, but you wouldn't note it unless you really looked hard. I think that's the thing is, like, most of the things I'm unhappy with, you would never know unless you were, like, really looking at it under a jeweler's...
With the jeweler's loop?
So then I don't know, I worked for a couple months. I kind of stalled out because I couldn't figure out how to get the gold trim around the arm cuffs. And then I was trying to cut some foam, and I cut my hand pretty badly on Halloween night. And then I kind of gave up for a month. And then I bought Legend of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom, and I was playing that for like 3 or 4 months until like 3 o'clock a.m. every work night. Then about June this year, I finally was like, I gotta get cracking. And Jeff was like, are you gonna be able to do this? And I was like, if I do everything perfectly on the first try, I'll get it done, which of course never happens. I spent like, about 2 months before Comic-Con this year just working on that suit. And even Wednesday night before we were due to leave, Thursday morning, I was still printing pieces until about 12:30 at night, and I hadn't even packed. And I wasn't going to build the dagger because it's really a complex design, and then I realized that my legacy dagger, which I bought several years ago, was really valuable and heavy, so I knew it would weigh down my belt. So I decided to build my own dagger from scratch. I left the chest armor until the very last weekend, and it did not come out. All the foam collapsed because it was like 5 years old, and I got really depressed that weekend. I was like teetering on the brink, and Jeff was like, just do battle damage version, and I was like, oh, okay, I guess I can do that. It wasn't pretty, but I though exhausted, I finished a workable version of my Green Ranger suit on the 10th anniversary of starting.
So that's why Ryan was falling asleep on his feet every night of Comic-Con.
Although I did, to be fair, also fall asleep last year in front of a live punk band at another hangout with SpongeBob and friends.
Guys, SpongeBob goes hard.
SpongeBob goes very hard, but always responsibly.
I don't want to pull the curtain back too far, but when you party with SpongeBob, you best bring your A game.
Yeah. So a couple of the guys really made a night of it on Friday night. Long story short, we got a very late start on Saturday. Didn't get out of the
Saturday
motel
was a rough start.
until about 3 p.m. And I was so despondent and tired that I almost didn't wear the suit. But as we were driving to Comic-Con, I thought to myself, yeah, no, I'm going to suit up. We get to our favorite parking spot. I put on the suit, which I had never worn because I was still building it up until the night before Comic-Con. And I had the guys take a couple pictures, some blurry pictures in the parking garage, and then I looked at it to see what it looked like all put together, and I was like, oh, it's not that bad.
Then we hit the San Diego Convention Center.
And pretty immediately, people were responding pretty positively to my suit.
On the walk to the convention center, like jaws were dropping. People were calling out from the other side of the street. People were singing the Power Rangers theme, and Ryan was blind and deaf to all of it. I was like, he has no idea the effect he's having on people with this awesome costume.
I heard some of it on the walk up. Like, I heard some people going like, Green Ranger. But yeah, I really couldn't see very well and definitely didn't hear everything. But it was encouraging, to say the least. And in the convention center, many little kids, like very little 5-6-year-old kids, wanted to take a picture, which was surprising to me because my suit is Green Dragon Ranger from 1993. I mean, that's 35-year-old character, but these tiny little baby kids were still like so excited and so in awe, and they were so nervous that their parents would have to be like, ask him to take a picture.
And Ryan would face palm them away and said, you should be watching Beetleborgs.
But it really made my day. Like I said, I had been so depressed, it made me feel like 100% better. And adults were like, one guy stopped me and was like, man, Beetleborgs was my childhood. Or, not Beetleborgs. He was like, man, Power Rangers was my childhood. And I was like as if I had had anything to do with the show, you know? Just by virtue of having that suit, it like made me a part of it for an afternoon.
It's your wish come true. It's your Fox Kids sweepstakes wish.
The only drawback was that, and not to toot my own horn, but when I built the helmet in 2014, you couldn't really get Green Ranger. A couple people were modifying the Red Ranger helmet into a Green Ranger version, but like you couldn't just buy a full suit. Cut to 2024, and you can just buy a beautiful it's expensive, but a beautiful screen accurate Green Ranger suit online. And so there are many Green Ranger cosplayers, and I would say everyone at the convention just assumed my suit was bought.
Stolen valor.
It should just be a compliment if it's good enough to where people just think you bought it. Well, I kind of wanted people to recognize the amount of effort I put in, I guess.
You spent 10 years grinding out this screen accurate costume.
Yeah, and the craftsmanship. A couple people came up to me and were like, oh, we just took off our Ranger suits, and they like wanted to show me their pictures, and they were like, have you met Black Ranger? And I was like, no, where is he? And they were like, oh, he's in the back. And then I was like, oh, well, you guys are cosplayers too, check out my dagger. What do you think? The dagger that I painstakingly recreated from scratch in ZBrush and then 3D printed and painted. And they were like, oh yeah, this is the same STL file I used for mine. And I was like, fuck, no, it's not. Although the weapons check lady at the front was like, oh, this one's painted really nice. So, like, I'm sure she saw a million Green Ranger daggers through the course of the con. And
that is the critique you want. She is the person who has seen every weapon that
Right.
has come through Comic-Con. She is the expert.
Me and Jeff tried to find Black Ranger. Couldn't do it. I was like just sort of blindly following people I vaguely recognized. So somehow I ended up behind Ed at one point, and Jeff and Drew were gone. We finally found Walter Jones, the original Black Ranger. And like from across the room, he goes, "Hey, Green." And I was like, "Yeah." And I cut some dude in line. But the dude was like, "It's cool, man. You put in that kind of work. You deserve to cut in line."
Nice.
And
finally, you got to cut a line at Comic-Con.
I know, right? And that guy was like, "Hey, battle damage. Cool." I was like, "Oh, way to go, Jeff."
Yes.
And then Black Ranger was like, "So, you bought this suit, right?" And I was like, "No." And Ed was like, "Nope, he made it. Everything except the gloves." And he was like, "Oh, you sewed that?" And I was like, "Yeah, I sewed it." And he was like, "But the helmet, you bought that, right?" And I was like, "Nope, I made it."
Let me show you these 10-year-old photos on my phone.
Let me walk you painstakingly through the process, the entire process.
Let me have you relive Jeff's life for the last 14 years.
But the funny thing, I think, was that I imagine when most people go up to Walter Jones at his table, they're like, "Power Rangers is my life. Power Rangers is my childhood. I'm such a fan of yours. You're my everything. I love you so much." And when I walked up to the table, I was like, "What do you think of my suit? Please give me your seal of approval. I made every scrap, every stitch." So it was cool. He was like, "Yeah, man, it looks great." And I was like, "Whew. That's right, just what I needed." And then I kind of like casually was like, "Hey, so can I take a photo with you?" And he goes, "Yeah, it's $60 for the photo op." And I was like, ugh. In my brain, I was like, "No, thank you." But out loud, I said, "Well, I don't have my wallet on. No place to put it in this suit." Ha ha ha. And then to throw our good friend Ed under the bus, he helpfully stepped in and said, "Oh, I'll spot you, man. Don't worry about it." And just immediately handed over $60 in cash. So I took my photo, and I don't regret it because it's cool. It's a cool photo that I'll have forever.
It's very cool that you and the Black Ranger got a photo together.
And then that was pretty much it, although I had to, it was like 4 hours that I was wearing the suit. My feet were starting to kind of hurt. I was like, I got to get out of this suit. At that point, I had lost Ed, and I was with Drew, and someone, I think maybe Drew had my badge, Ed had my wallet and car keys, so we had to just wait for like another hour for Ed to find us so I could get my car keys to go back and change out of the suit. And at that point, no one was complimenting the suit anymore or wanting to take photos, and I was like, how dare they?
I swung by the Hilton again to say hi to the HWA San Diego and LA chapter folks, and then we all reconvened to take off our super suits and catch the Deadpool and Wolverine movie.
Yep.
That Ryan, he was just weeping openly at the end. He was just audibly sobbing.
So much nostalgia.
So that was a very successful Saturday. And Sunday morning, we finally got to have breakfast at the Queen Public House.
Which was lovely.
A breakfast spot that I've been casing for years.
It sounds kind of sad, but like one of my favorite parts of Comic-Con is just sitting down to breakfast and like having a nice cup of coffee with you guys.
It's so nice.
Yeah. In the morning where it hasn't become like too hot yet, but the sun is shining and it's just lovely.
I don't think that's sad at all. I agree 100%. So we zoomed around on the convention floor for a little while, and then we met up with some of Ryan's friends.
Finally got to meet up with a couple of friends of mine from France who I have not seen in 10 years. And I wanted to meet up with them on Saturday wearing my suit because I've been giving them progress updates. My friend is an incredible sculptor, and she had a couple of pieces at the ECC booth, some Hellboy sculptures that she made. But yeah, met up with them on Sunday, got to hang out for a little bit, but we had kind of a hard out for Ed, so we had to leave pretty early, but we had to get our Old Town fix.
So, as is tradition, we went to decompress from all the chaos and phantasmagoria of Comic-Con by passing through Older Town, which is an Old West historical village inside Old Town San Diego. We saw a parade of lowriders. We had some chips and drinks while we watched machete dancing, and then the guys hit the road.
Vamoosed.
I finally found this hidden speakeasy, Occulto 477, that Lisa Borton had told me about at StokerCon. So I slid in there and had some cocktails. It was really cool inside, and I finished up just in time to catch a short tour of the Whaley House the most haunted house in America. But for me, the real value was getting inside some of these cool old buildings in Old Town that are normally off limits. And then I strolled through the historic El Campo Santo Cemetery and called it a night.
Back to the Roach Motel.
Back to the Roach Motel. More roaches for me. So Ryan, final thoughts. What do you think of Comic-Con 2024?
If we want to do anything, we're going to have to wait in some lines. Or just get up ungodly early like we did that one time for Jack Ryan. Actually, it was cool doing the Nickelodeon party because we've never had enough clout to like get invited to the after parties. So like it really kind of depends on what you're looking for in your Comic-Con. If you want to try to do nighttime stuff, you're going to have to miss basically all the daytime stuff. If you want to do daytime stuff, you're going to have to get a good night's sleep early so you can get up at 5 a.m. and go wait in line to do whatever. I'm a little bit disappointed that we didn't really do anything with the exception of the boat, which is always great, but it was offset by getting to do some nightlife stuff, which we've never done before, feeling like big shots, getting into exclusive parties, and wearing a suit cosplay, which I've never done before, with the exception of my Orin, which is, I gotta say, the greatest cosplay you can possibly do, because just a necklace you wear, anyone can wear the Orin from Neverending Story, and people do recognize it, and it's not, they can't just assume that you bought it somewhere. And it's not hot. It's not sweaty. As of now, I still haven't cleaned my Green Ranger suit, and it's pretty smelly. And my chest armor, my battle-damaged chest armor has completely disintegrated and fallen apart. But I still had a good weekend, and of course, while we were sitting in the Roach Motel, I couldn't wait to get back to my own bed. It was all I wanted. And as soon as I got back to my own bed, all I wanted was to go back and be at Comic-Con again.
Yeah, it was a good year, and there was a lot of novelty.
Yeah.
We did new stuff, different stuff, which really helps overcome the weariness, the extremely privileged weariness of being like, ugh, Comic-Con again.
Yeah.
We've done it so many times.
The funniest thing was there was one activation that they were like every day they were begging us to go into. It was like the Pudgy experience or something. No idea what it was.
Pudgy World.
But they were every time we walked by in the gas lamp, they were like, "Gentlemen, want to do the Pudgy experience?" And we were like, "Nah, no thanks. No lines, free entry, completely open and clear."
I don't want to be a part of any Comic-Con activation that wants to have me. I'll tell you that right now. If I don't have to get up at 3 a.m. and knife an IMDb intern, not interested.
I guarantee it was like the greatest thing at Comic-Con. And when you get in there, it was like an entire world they created with full actors and full temperature control, free Pudgy beers that you could open inside.
I think it was like a kids penguin-based ice cream.
It was ice cream and we didn't do it?
Yeah.
What the f***?
So as always, I try to determine who won the con, what movie, show, or character was the most represented in all the cosplay and fandom we saw. And for this year, I'm calling it first place. Prize goes to X-Men. Lots of really great X-Men cosplay this year. Second place goes to kilts. For some reason, a lot of people in kilts.
I suppose it's also a good thing to wear in the San Diego heat in July.
Absolutely. I mean, makes sense and looks good.
Functional and comfortable. I would wear a kilt all the time if it was like societally acceptable.
It is.
We'll have to discuss that on another day.
All right. Well, for now, that is a wrap-up of our 2024 Comic-Con Spectacular. We hope you enjoyed it, and join us next week for our regularly...
for an in-depth conversation with a horror author galore.